If water doesn't flow, it becomes stagnant. And if money doesn't move, it dies. And that hit me. And I thought, I'm going to teach people the truth about money and how to be the owner of their financial system, not the consumer.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I am your host, as always, Yonah Weiss, and I am really grateful to be with another amazing guest today. We got Jim Oliver on the show. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing excellent. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Yonah.
It's a pleasure. I remember I was a guest on your podcast probably like 4 or 5 years ago. And with all the guesting that I've done on podcasts, unfortunately, it's hard to stay in touch with everyone, but I'm glad that we reconnected and we're able to do this because what you've accomplished in your career is, no short of astonishing. So I would love to break it down a little bit for our guests, our listeners, who may not be so familiar with who is Jim Oliver. Why don't you give us, before we get into the conversation, a little background, how you got started and what you're working on now?
Absolutely. So I got fascinated with money, and I thought money was wealth. Yonah, as you know, wealth isn't just about money, but when you don't have money, you're in love with money. And so, because you don't have it, so you think it's some fantasy like, hey, if I just could get enough money, then I would be happy, right? And as a kid growing up in poverty and at one point in time being homeless, all I could think about was money. So I was obsessed. But what I didn't realize is that everything that I needed to learn about money, I actually learned when I was 13 years old. I was working in a casket factory, swinging a hammer, the hardware. It was like for the hardware that goes onto the casket, right? And we would mold like the handles, and then they would sand it and plate it and polish it. And my job, the worst job, was to hammer the handles so that you could, hold the casket. And there was a gentleman that owned the business, Dwayne McIntyre. Now, I was adopted at birth, and he adopted 4 kids. So I watched him a lot because his kids lived in Palos Verdes. I lived in one of the worst areas of Los Angeles. So I thought, what does he know that I don't know, or the people in my neighborhood don't know? And I was obsessed. But I would watch him come in. Now I'm swinging a hammer 8 hours a day, or as close to 8 hours as I could. And he's coming in for a couple hours. I don't know what he's doing, honestly, at 13 years old. I just see him for a few hours and then he leaves. He's behind his desk and he's got an office, which I thought was, oh my gosh, that's amazing. He's so important. And then one day, a couple weeks later, after I started working there, I'm walking down the street in my neighborhood and I see somebody pulling weeds in one of the rundown houses. And I look down and it's Dwayne McIntyre. And I said, what are you doing here? Now, I'd like to tell you, Yonah, that I was very respectful. Sir, I just wasn't that kid. I was this street kid that didn't have good manners or anything else. And so I said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, I own this house. And I said, why would you own this house? You live in Palos Verdes, own real estate up in Palos Verdes. And he said, Jim, I own real estate all over Los Angeles. So right then and there, Yonah, I learned everything I needed to know about being wealthy. Own, right? Own the business. And own real estate. And if you own real estate, you're in the real estate business. Mm-hmm. But I didn't do that. I got obsessed with money and I listened to the noise of our society and the herd in the world. And I went into Wall Street. Mm-hmm. And I was a money babysitter or a financial planner. And I believe you can make money on Wall Street. So don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Okay, but not Main Street people out there putting their money in 401ks, mutual funds, and just leaving it there for 20, 30, 40 years and not using it. Mm-hmm. And that is not how you become wealthy. But I was becoming wealthy. I had $700 million under management. And back in the day, I charged 1%. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, one day I'm looking at these reports that are supposed to tell me how much money my clients are making. And it said 9.38%. I thought, wait a minute, I have money in there. It didn't grow by 9.38% in that period. So I took out fees and expenses, and I didn't even account for inflation, but taxes. It was around 4%.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wait a minute. I'm telling all these people to accumulate money and then someday stop working and then live off of that money and hope you don't die before you run out. I'm selling scarcity.
Yeah.
And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I thought, no more. I walked away from that business to teach people the truth about money.
Wow. And how long ago was that?
21 years.
21 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow. And you created something called CreateTailwind. Tell me about is that the business you're talking about now, or tell me the kind of the transition into that.
Yeah. So CreateTailwind, the reason that it's CreateTailwind, all one word, that like is just people go, well, what does that mean?
What is that, right?
So I believe in life, we are fighting a headwind.
Mm-hmm.
We're fighting a headwind when it comes to our money. We're fighting a headwind when it comes to our health, when it comes to our spirituality. We are fighting a headwind. And one of the things that I teach people how to do is turn that around in the wealth side. And I'll talk to somebody about the health side, but that's not my expertise. But in the wealth side, how to create a tailwind. So let me give you one example. The average person spends 34.5 cents of every net dollar that they earn in interest.
Wow.
Right? That means that if you earn $1, they tax you, then you pay 35% in interest. And people will say, Jim, I don't pay 35% interest rate for anything. No, not interest rate, but volume of interest, meaning like a mortgage. If you pay a payment for 30 years into a mortgage, right? A 30-year amortized mortgage, about 50 cents of every dollar that you pay in is interest over 30 years. In the beginning, it's over 85%. But if you earn $1, Yonah, and you got to give me half of it, do you care what your interest rate is?
That's crazy.
Right? I mean, but it's crazy, but that's what people do. Hey, I got a really good interest rate on my mortgage.
Right.
Great. And they just refinanced me after 5 years because they want to keep me at 90% volume of interest. What piece of it is the interest? So that hit me like a ton of bricks. We're trying to save. We're told save 10% of everything you earn and leave it in there for 20, 30, 40 years. Okay. But no motion. But motion is a law of God. If blood doesn't flow through our bodies, we die. If air doesn't flow through our bodies, we die. If water doesn't flow, it becomes stagnant. And if money doesn't move, it dies. And that hit me. And I thought, I'm going to teach people the truth about money and how to be the owner of their financial system, not the consumer.
So what's the tailwind exactly? Like, what is that?
So the tailwind is if I can recapture that 34.5 cents of every dollar that I'm going to spend in interest, then now instead of fighting a headwind, I'm creating a tailwind, just like an airplane, and it's going to propel me faster. So if I have an airplane that goes 500 miles an hour and I'm fighting a headwind of 34.5 cents of every dollar, 350 mile an hour is coming at me, I'm only moving 150 miles an hour.
Right.
But if I can get that wind behind me, meaning I'm going to recapture that 34.5 cents. So I have 345 miles an hour pushing me, plus my airplane goes 500 miles an hour. Now I'm going 850 miles an hour, right? So it's that analogy of create that tailwind, recapture that interest that you were going to pay somebody else, pay it to yourself, keep it moving. Velocity of money, create velocity of money by turning. Every business in the world is based on turns.
Right.
Is turn that money faster. And the faster you turn it, the more velocity you create and the more tailwind you create. And that's how we came up with CreateTailwind.
Wow. And so was that the first business that you started when you had that realization, leaving Wall Street, leaving the financial planning and teaching people about this?
You know, it's funny because it all kind of happened so fast and all together. The first business, as I said, I have to prove this. I'm not going to tell people to do this unless I'm doing it. And, you know, it's like, you know, you can't have somebody that's 50 pounds overweight telling you how to get in shape, right? So I thought you got to walk the walk. So I bought a little logistics business that refurbished electronics. That business was like the first business that I used infinite banking to build. Business where I teach people how to do infinite banking came almost simultaneously because it's like, okay, now I have proof of concept. This is working. let's find this one and this one and this one. And as soon as you open your mind and you have, opportunities find cash. So when I'm building this banking system with infinite banking, all of a sudden I had all these opportunities. I had these hard money lending things where I gave somebody 200 grand and in 60 days they paid me back 225, right? And their collateral was so good, I wanted them to default. And it's like, it just snowballed, and it snowballed way faster than I ever thought it would.
Wow. So for our listeners who may not be familiar with this concept of infinite banking, you're teaching it, you've been doing it for a long time. I know there are others out there. We've had a couple of people on the podcast kind of mention it, but for our listeners who may not be familiar, give us a quick breakdown of what that actually means.
Yeah. So think about this. Is if we know we have this need because of what we do with our money, and you finance every single thing that you buy.
Basically.
You either give up interest that you could have earned or you pay somebody else interest. There are no exceptions. So you have this insurance contract. This insurance contract is designed for cash value. The way that a bank would buy BOLI, bank-owned life insurance. And people in the audience are probably thinking, why would a bank buy life insurance, right? Mm-hmm. Or COLI, corporate-owned life insurance, because they know that when you have $1 of cash value in these specially designed insurance contracts, the insurance company has to give you their money interest only. Has to. No application, anything. No, you don't have to apply. Just give me your money. They make your cash value in this tax shelter. They collateralize it.
Right.
And so it's there. It's growing. But you don't get to take their money and your money, right? And so now you have other people's money, you have control of it. So OPM, OPT, other people's time. So we take that money and we put it into assets, right? And other people's effort. So if it's a business, you have somebody running that business. If it's real estate, you have somebody renting that real estate. Whatever it is, if it's hard money lending, those people, those are our assets. So, and then it's how many times can I turn it to create velocity? So I have my money growing in this tax-free, guaranteed to grow every single day, uninterrupted compounding. Then I buy these assets and I turn them, because I'm not going to take money out of the system. I'm going to let the system keep creating and building, right? And normally, you would have to say, well, I have this money in this account, or I have this asset. Mm-hmm. And because I can collateralize that cash, I get all of that in there, all the money in the insurance contract, and I get those assets. And I get a legacy, because life insurance by nature has a death benefit, tax-free, right?
Right.
A good man leaves an inheritance, right? A good person leaves an inheritance. So we have the assets growing in value. As inflation happens, assets go up in value, unlike instruments which go down in value, like your Wall Street account. But your real estate goes up in value because you can increase rents, you can increase prices for your customers, et cetera, as inflation goes up. So I have these assets accumulating, they're cash flowing. So I have a rate of cash flow. I have the money in the insurance contract growing tax invisible. And then I have this legacy return growing for someday when I graduate from this world, right? So right. I get it all. It's an and asset. I get all of those things, but it's my own financial system.
So you're creating like your own bank in a sense by using the insurance money that you have, your own insurance policy, right? Yep. And you're just borrowing from the cash value of that insurance policy and then using that to create wealth.
Yeah. So if you put $1 in the insurance contract and you had $1 of cash value, the insurance company has to give you up to 100% of that dollar as a loan, interest only, right? Mm-hmm. So your money stays in there growing tax-free, and you get to go use their money to go make money. And so it's like you being the owner of the bank, not the consumer of the bank at the bank, like your normal just community bank.
So the $1 million question, which I'm sure you get, and I get this question also with COSAG and things like that, is like, well, it sounds too good to be true, or how come everyone's not doing this? I'm sure you get that a lot.
The reason everybody's not doing it is a lot of people are afraid to break out of the herd. When I say it to a doctor, just perfect with cost segregation. So if I say to a doctor, you're making $1 million a year, your biggest problem is what you pay in taxes. We need to get you involved in real estate so you can accelerate your depreciation, lower your tax rate, or eliminate the taxes you're paying. But let's get it at under 10% or less.
Right.
And then we'll move forward. They go, none of my colleagues are doing that. Putting money in my profit sharing plan. Jim, is that even legal?
Right.
I mean, they start to question because a sheep wants to be in the herd, right? We have to break out of the herd. So it takes courage to break out of the herd. It takes confidence. And the way that you get those two things is from coaching. Like if I were going to I don't know how to do a cost segregation report. I don't have to. I've just come to you.
Right.
Right. And if I had 10 doctors that really wanted to reduce their taxes and they formed an alliance to go buy medical commercial real estate, which they know, invest in what you know from the richest man in Babylon, then guess what? I can reduce my taxes immensely. Mm-hmm. So it's that same thing is people don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And so they're afraid. And so action cures fear. Action cures everything, right? So like you have to educate yourself on how it works and ask, different people about, hey, do you do cost segregation or how does this work? I don't remember if we talked about this, but I've got a friend in Wisconsin. He makes about $6 million a year, has a property management company, has about $800 million of real estate, pays no income tax.
Right.
Because of what you do,
mm-hmm.
right? And how you show people how to do that and accelerate the depreciation. I mean, you have to understand the rules of the game. And that's what infinite banking does, is it makes you control the banking function in your life so that you can go buy things like real estate, so that you can accelerate the depreciation using cost segregation, et cetera, so that you can have expenses, you can deduct the interest, you can do all of these things to go from 50% if you're in a bad state down to 10% effective tax rate or less.
Less, yeah. And I see people doing it all the time. Absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. There's so much that we don't know that we don't even know. And education is key. And to me, it's like, that's why I bring people like you on this show so that our listeners can be educated and can open their minds to new concepts that they had no idea about and start exploring it, because there's so much out there that can help you. I mean, you wrote a book about it, right? Make bank without the bank. And it's basically telling people this story of how to do exactly what you've been describing the last 10 minutes or so. But Jim, you mentioned before we started recording that something very exciting next week at the time of this recording, you're going to be releasing your second book. Tell me about that one.
This next book is Owner Shift. The one thing that I've realized, and I've read so many books about this, and it's cultural. If you were fortunate enough to grow up in the right family that teaches you this, mm-hmm. but it's about ownership. And so the shift from being a consumer to an owner. So the book is Owner Shift, how to take control of your personal life and create these things that we're talking about that people don't do. Okay. And really the 5 shifts that you have to make. And there's no secret. The first one is your mind shift. And it's just exactly what you said is, what am I afraid of? What false beliefs do I have about money? Where did I learn them? I debate them like I'm in court to show that they're false. And then I look at people that have done great things and I say, that's my new belief. And I create a new belief about money. So that's one shift. There are 4 other shifts that we all have to make and run. So like this ledger, if you think of a ledger, right, in a business, you have to run your personal life like that. Am I building assets? Am I paying too much in taxes? And you can put your head in the sand and say, it's not happening, it's not happening, it's not happening. But it is, right? It's like aging. Well, if I go, I'm 60, almost 60 years old. I'll be 60 years old in a month. Oh. And hey, that's just it. I'm just 60. Yeah, of course my back's going to hurt. Of course I can't lift as much weight. No, I know a guy in his 80s and his biological age is going down, right?
I mean, by the way, you look great for 60. I wouldn't have imagined that for a second.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. But I had to, by the way, I don't do all the traditional things. If I have high blood pressure, if I have something else, I look at what can I do naturally? What can I do? How do I take care of my body? Is food more important than how I feel? I'm getting stronger. I'm getting leaner. And people say, well, you can't really build muscle in your 50s or 60s. BS. So it's like everything that we're told is to control us and keep us in the herd. Our health, our wealth, our spiritually, right? And it's like, no, let's break out of that. Really, like you said, educate ourselves.
Absolutely.
If you know what's happening, you'll know what to do.
It all comes down to that. It sounds like you've had a lot of, inspiration over the years. You talk about having a coach, if you're trying out a new venture, finding experts, finding people that can guide you. Who are some of the people that, have kind of inspired you or that you've been mentored by that have made like a huge difference in your life? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah. R. Nelson Nash, who's kind of the godfather of infinite banking. And he taught me how important the banking function is. And throughout history, how banks have financed both sides of every war. The 1921 Oklahoma race riot and what that was all about. It was all about banking and Wall Street and people taking control of their own money. Yes, it was about race, but it was what they were doing that caused the problem and made all the people go, wait a minute, their money, we can't let them be their own bank and their own Wall Street and create their own community and markets. We've got to control that, right? I mean, they were willing to kill people for that. And I can give you example after example over history, but like that, it's educating yourself about the truth. But then it's like you have this fear. What do I do? Who can help me? Who do I trust? Will you trust somebody that's only trying to educate you? Hey, I don't know if infinite banking is for anybody in the audience, but if you want to learn about it, we teach you about it and you decide. We get you to the point. Either this is for me or it's not for me. It's like cost segregation, same thing. When I first heard that term, I had no idea what it meant. And then somebody ran me through it and I thought, well, that makes sense. Why wouldn't I do that?
Right. And
why wouldn't I keep adding to the portfolio? Right? Why wouldn't I keep buying real estate? So yeah, I mean, it's the way that we get courage and confidence is through coaching. If you and I were going to go climb Mount Everest tomorrow, I'm going to make sure we got the best equipment. But you know what I'm going to insist on? The best Sherpa in the world.
Yeah. And you got to train also for a long time.
Train, right?
Exactly.
You have to educate yourself. Hey, what's it going to feel like when we're at the peak? What's it going to feel like? How much, like all of these things. It's a plan. We have a vision. We want to go climb this mountain, right? But do you know that most people that have died climbing Mount Everest, it's on the way down. So,
wow.
And it's like when people say Sir Edmund Hillary was the first person to climb Mount Everest, that's not true. And again, I don't remember the guy's name because he didn't make it down. He did make it to the peak, but he wasn't knighted. He wasn't, he's not famous because he didn't make it down the mountain. And this is what people think. They think accumulate money in their lifetime, turn it off, and then descend the mountain and hope you die before you run out of money. Hope is not a financial strategy. And that's not how you build a legacy either. You build it by continuing to build and have it just continue to keep growing. And when you're gone, somebody else grows it. And they share in their community and they share in the things that are important in their families and their communities and their synagogues and churches or whatever's important to you.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Love that. Jim, I want to transition now to what we call the final four.
All right.
These are four questions I ask all my guests. First one for you. You did mention one earlier, but what's the worst job that you ever had? Because
wasn't the worst job.
Casket building to me sounds pretty.
So again, I was a bad kid growing up, and I was always in trouble. Okay, I mean, I've been in courtrooms as a kid. I grew up poor. I'm not making excuses. I'm not saying I was a victim or anything else, but I got myself in trouble. And so one time I had a job for restitution. Okay. In community service where I had to do hot tar roofing in Missouri in the summer. And I'm telling you that in the first 10 minutes, you're sweating like, oh my gosh. I mean, you can't believe it, right? And I got to do this for 8 hours. And it's basically dipping and it's hot tar and it feels like it's 120 degrees on the roof. And at 17 years old, or 18 years old, it was so hard. That's the worst job I've ever had.
I can't imagine. Something like that. definitely is up there with some of the worst that I've ever heard. Second question, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Yeah, it's easy to say Rich Dad, Poor Dad or something like that. But I'm going to say the book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Now, when I was a kid, you had to read this book. And so again, you got to remember, I'm this poor kid, poverty, everything else. I think I'm a seagull. That's what I do. I stay in this lane. This is what society tells me. I'm not going to go too far from where I started. And I was like, I don't want that. So Jonathan Livingston Seagull, he doesn't want to just be a seagull. He wants to do tricks and he wants to do all this stuff. And everybody laughs at him and says, you can't do that. And he says, watch me. So I know it sounds silly, but it was that one thing that said, you don't have to be what you were born. I don't have to stay a seagull. I can be an eagle. I can be whatever I want to be. And it was that little belief in that little short book by Richard Bach that changed my paradigm.
Yeah, I remember that also when I was a kid. It's such a powerful, you don't think about necessarily the lessons that you learn in some of these books, but you're absolutely right. That is a huge paradigm shift. That's fascinating. Third question is, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn? And this could be anything.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say I've tried, to learn to play the guitar 3 times in my life. And as I've gotten wealthier, I've gotten really nice guitars. I can't do it. I cannot get music to make sense in my head. And I would love to be able to play one song on a guitar, is because I love music, but it's just a foreign language in my head. The rhythm of it, how you would strum the guitar. I mean, okay, I can get these down, right? Chords, but this part of it, like, well, how do you know which strings to hit as you come up? And how would I ever learn to read music? I've tried. It's like trying to learn Spanish. I just can't do it.
Well, you could. I think.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm thinking about making a comeback. I'm going to make it 4 times because I'm not a quitter. Okay, for my birthday, I might buy myself the 4th guitar and say I'm going to learn from YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, like you said earlier, right? Find a good coach, find a good teacher. And I think that's really what it's all about. But it is fascinating because learning music is or playing a musical instrument is one of the most common answers that we get on the show. And it's just fascinating to me because it really is, it's transformative. And it uses a different part of your brain that maybe if you've never used it before, it's very hard muscle to build in your brain. So I do relate to that, how, it is difficult for some people to kind of conquer that, but best of luck. Listen,
thank you.
You can do it.
Thanks.
Fourth and final question, what does success mean to you?
Success means to me freedom to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, with who I want to do it with. And that's financial independence. Freedom is everything to me. Is once you have money, it's not about money, right? It's about freedom. And when you think of taxes, I think of less freedom, right? So the more taxes I pay, the less free I am. Mm-hmm. Because the money I have, if I didn't pay any taxes, I could take extra money and give it to the things that I care about. So it's doing what I want to do, when I want to do it, with whoever I want to do it with. That's what success means to me.
That's it. That's really what it's all about. Love it. Well, Jim, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want?
Yeah, so you can go to CreateTailwind. We're about ready to launch a new website too. You can go to create_tailwind on Instagram. You can go to our community, which we have a bunch of free courses and stuff on there about infinite banking, to learn what it means, how it exactly works, everything that you could imagine or think about, and answer every question. But it's community.createtailwind.com, or search in your app store for Create Tailwind, all one word.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to put all that in the show notes. Hope you will check you out because this has been fascinating. You have lived, an amazing life and have done amazing things. So I'm really grateful you spent the time with us today and just appreciate you doing it. And a little secret, I'm actually in a little bit, we're going to be doing this again in reverse. So
that's right.
Excited to do that as well. But really a pleasure. And we'll talk to you soon. And to our listeners, thank you all for joining us once again, all the way until the end of this podcast. And remember, until next time, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, a connection request, Yonah Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.